the 555 opening signal box code. Signal box is now, full signal box is now well and truly open. A system of electrical control with initially switches by the signals, then a block of switches. Then they went to DMU control. They also had a period of time before the railway was taken down and moved here, where we had overhead wiring, which was supported on with knitting needles, like we see in the circle here. And there's a two-car which gives them a kind of realistic operation, and we find this more appropriate for the way we operate the layout.
Trains going that way, of course, to find a very long if you won't go to the going that way, of course, the only time you don't need the lock is if you're using these.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the National Rail Museum. In particular, welcome to this, the Lancashire Yorkshire Railway's School of Signal. This layout was built in 1912 by the apprentices of the Lancashire Yorkshire Railway at Horwich Works. And we've got a certificate on the wall somewhere that we got earlier this year to say that this is now the oldest model railway in the world that's still functioning. And that certificate's from the Guinness Book of World Records. So the first thing he's going to do, if he's listening to me, is he's going to ring one beat on the bell, call attention. And he isn't listening, is he?
Dave?
Now there are two Daves in Signal Box A. You know, there's a Dave and a Robert in Signal Box A. One of them is going to ring one beat on the bell to Peter here, to John here, to call his attention. That's right. And John's going to reply to that one beat. Yes, I'm listening. He's replied to call attention. Now Dave's now going to pass his message, and that message is going to be in the form of a question. And the question is going to be, is the line clear for an ordinary passenger train? Different types of trains have different bell codes, so the signalman knows what train he's agreeing to bring into his section. And the one for an ordinary passenger train is 3 pause 1. Now then, John, before he replies, he needs to check that the line really is clear. He probably already knows it is. It's clear all through that 5-mile section. I'm going to tell you later how we established that, because you can't see those 5 miles. But it also has to be clear for a distance of 440 yards, a quarter of a mile beyond his first stop signal, his home signal. And within that distance, all the points have to be set for the safety of the approaching train. And they're locked in position, so look, we've got number 10 lever reversed. Yes, we have. Yes, he could have accepted it actually, so I was wrong to criticise him. But I wanted to explain what he has to go through before he does it. Now then, he can now accept the train, agree to it coming. And he does that by repeating the 3 pause 1 bell signal. And then he moves the telegraph indicator to the green segment, which is lettered line clear. And if you look in Dave's signal box back a day, it's repeated there. Only when Dave's seen that in the line clear position is he allowed to clear his section signal for the train to enter the section through to John. He's going to clear all his signals now in sequence. When the train passes Dave at signal box A, he needs to let John know it's coming, and he does that by sending 2 beats on the bell, train entering section. John replies to those 2 beats and moves the indicator needle to train online. That's the red segment. So they've both got a visual indication that there's a train in the section. Incidentally, I didn't see them do it, but both of the signalmen will have been writing down all these bell signals and the times at which they were sent and received in a book that we call the train register. First thing he does is call his attention in case he's gone back to sleep. 1 beat on the bell, 1 beat repeated. And now he sends the train out of section bell signal. 2 pause 1, 2 pause 1 repeated.
Oh, but there's a very dodgy off on that distance. Sorry, dodgy on that distance, isn't it? I suspect because he's got so many out of distance, he would have a box instruction saying short section. Considering that
If you look
the
on
distance
the wall
number
behind the
C's
scene,
starting
you'll
and
see there are diagrams.
I'm surprised he hasn't got an out of
of each
distance underneath his own.
It's the right hand of the two signals. Incidentally, if you're wondering why the two signals are at different heights, the two signals alongside one another, that's because the route via the outer circle, as we call it, the train's coming on, is of a higher speed. So it's a higher speed, so the arm is higher up. If you look back at signal box T, where we've got the two signals for one platform or the other platform, right hand or left hand platform, you see they're actually at the same, because the assumption is that the speed is the same going into either platform. More importantly, they're all interlocked with one another. So, for example, the signalman can't pull a distant signal until he's pulled the signals ahead, the stop signals ahead. So it can't confuse the driver, it can't send a misleading message. Nor can the driver clear a signal for the right-hand route. The points are set for the left-hand route. They're all intricately interlocked. Now what we're going to do now with the London Underground car is go down to John at signal box stage, and John is going to cross it from one line to the other. There's what we call a crossover road. Signposts in each line enable it to cross from the one main line to the other main line. It's going back to its start now. Beyond two signals.
Just getting used to the box.
To change it. Tail lamp put it on the other. There's those two little shooting signals that John referred to. There's two there, but they're one above the other. And they give an indication of route to the driver as well, because they read top to bottom, left to right. So if it's the top signal that fails, it tells the driver if we're going on the left-hand route. If it's the bottom signal, which I think it will be, if John gets it right, it'll be coming on the inner circle, the right-hand of the two routes.
Point number 9, then you need to...
The one for an ordinary passenger train is 3-4-1. Now then, before Danny answers that, Danny needs to check that the line really is clear. It has to be clear for, let's say it's a 5-mile section. I'll tell you how he establishes that because he can't see that at the moment. But it also has to be clear for a quarter of a mile beyond his first signal, his home signal. And within that distance, all the points have to be set for the safety of the approaching train. And the facing points, number 10, number 9 points, number 10 lever has to be locked. That's it. So it's just as well he didn't accept it straight away when he was going to, isn't it? Because he hadn't locked number 10 points. Okay, now he has. Everything's all right. So he can agree to the train approaching him. In railway parlance, we say accept the train. And he does that by doing two things. First, he repeats the 3-4-1. And next, he moves the indicator needle on his telegraph instrument across to the green segment, which is lettered line clear. And look, that's repeated in Andy's signal box there in the upper dial. Only when Andy's seen that at line clear is he allowed to clear his signal for the train to enter the section. He's going to clear all his signals now in succession. Home signal first. Then the section signal, that section signal that reads into the section to Danny, and then that distant signal, which is back at signal box T. Danny's watching it as it passes the box. As soon as it passes clear of the facing points, he's going to put his home signal back to danger to protect it. He's watching the train as it passes, making sure there's nothing wrong with it, there's no doors open or anything, but he's looking for one very, very important thing. Remember I told you how we'd established that those 5 miles were clear again? And that's because on the rear vehicle the train carries a tail lamp, and only on the rear vehicle. All trains carry tail lamps on the rear vehicle. Here's an old-fashioned paraffin one. This is a modern battery flashing LED one you see on the back of today's freight trains. Call Andy's attention, 1 beat on the bell, 1 beat repeated, and he's now going to send the train out of section bell signal 2 pause 1. Andy's going to reply, and then Danny's going to put his needle back to the normal position, the central position. And at that stage, if Andy had a further train to offer forward, that's the stage he can do it. He can't just send it. Danny's in charge, he needs to get Danny's permission. But that's the stage when he knows Danny should be able to accept a further train. That's what we're going to do now, because we're going to start with Paul, signalling this train back to Danny, Danny to Andy, and Andy to Peter, is it at the far end? Who is at the far end?
Brian.
Okay, so let's start with this train making its way back to the terminal. So this time we're going to be using all the bells, all the signals, all the indicators, and over the course of the next quarter of an hour we'll be operating a sequence of trains around this layout, and we'll be using all the bells, signals, points, and all the rest of it. So there will be quite a cacophony of bells going on in this room. If you think it's confusing, you're absolutely right. But one thing to bear in mind, in a real signal box, the only bells you hear are the ones that ring for you. Even the ones you're sending away from you, you don't hear the bell ring. You hear the tapper rattling on its key as you move it up and down, but you won't hear a bell noise unless it's a bell ringing for you. Obviously, it's impossible to replicate that type of situation in a room like this, or indeed in the training room where this layout spent its 82.5-year working life of Lancashire. So if you're trying to concentrate on bells, just try to concentrate on one signal box. It's not easy, I know. The other thing that makes it not easy with this layout is even though we're moving these models quite slowly around the layout, they come through the sections remarkably quickly compared to the real railway. In a real signal box, you've time for at least 1 cup of tea between train entering section and the train turning up. Here in the museum, we're not even allowed to drink tea, but it doesn't matter because we've got no time to drink tea anyway, because things do move very quickly. As I've often said, with the exceptions of some major junction signal boxes, if you can work a signal box on this layout, you'd have no difficulty working in real life at all. 3 pause 1 pause 2 means it's line clear for an electric ordinary passenger train. It does help the signalmen know if a train that's approaching them is electric or not, so that they don't try to put an electric train onto a non-electrified piece of railway. So that's why we're using 3, 1, 2. You'll also find that when this train gets to signal box B, Danny's cleared the right-hand signal of 2 signals. Yeah, that's his home signal, but it's 2 signals side by side. So not only is it giving the driver permission to proceed, it's telling him which way he's proceeding. And that's interlocked with the points, so Danny can't have made a mistake. He's got to have the points in the correct position and locked in the correct position before he can clear the signal. So it's a guarantee to the driver that he's going on the right-hand route, because it's the right-hand signal. Why is it lower than the left-hand signal? That's because it's a lower speed on this route. If the 2 routes were the same speed, they would be at the same height. But the so-called outer circle, around the table on the outside, is of a higher speed. At least we're pretending it is.
No.
If you look down to the far end of the layout at signal box T, you'll see we've got 2 signals side by side down there as well. But they're at the same height. Because whether you go into the left-hand platform or the right-hand platform, it's the same. And look at this tail lamp here. This is one of these built-in electric lamps in the back of the unit. It means just the same thing to the signal. Now we're going to run the express train around the layout. We're signalling that forward by the bell signal 4 consecutively. 4 without a pause. Remember 3-1? There's 3 and then a pause and then 1. 4 means is line clear for an express passenger train. And again, signalmen need to know what type of train it is they're accepting, so they know the priority in activities. They know how long it will take to pass through the sections. But I'm going to show you something about this express train when it gets round here that will illustrate that it's not only, or it wasn't only in these days, in the old days, it's not only the bell codes that indicate what type of train it is, but the position of the lamps on the train also gives that indication. Because this is an express train, it's got one lamp above each buffer. That's the code for an express passenger train. And I'm going to ask whoever's driving it. Who's driving it? Yeah, Steve's driving it. I'm going to ask Steve to stop it here so that I can show things with these lamps. Yeah, this is express. If it was a stopping train, the 3 pause 1, it would have one lamp up here. If it was a locomotive on its own, without coaches, a so-called light locomotive, it would have one lamp here. If it was an empty train, a locomotive, and the driver and fireman, in the words of the rule, are required to look back from time to time to make sure the whole train is still following. In daylight, they're looking for the lamp case. They can see it coming out from the brake van. At night, they're looking for a white light to tell them they've got the whole train. Unfitted trains, or even partially fitted, I mean some wagons have continuous brakes, and the rest of the train doesn't. Those type of trains haven't been operating on British Railways since 1991. So the unfitted train together with the side lights are now consigned to this train. Aspinall, or John Aspinall, later Sir John Aspinall, was the chief mechanical engineer of the Lancashire Yorkshire Railway and went on to become the railway's general manager. But he was the designer of these locomotives. 242 is easier than that, really. It's the middle locomotive. There are 2 little wheels at the front, one on each side. There are 4 big wheels in the middle. Rather than clockwork or simply pushing the models around. And interestingly, at first, the electric current was passed to the models on this layout through the 3rd rail of the outer rail.
We'll take that.
And it's passed to them at 40 volts AC. 40 volts AC, I'm probably getting a bit of feedback from my fingers now. So nowadays, all our models are being able to control. Some of them are otherwise original already.
Down, didn't it?
Please make your way to the Great Hall and gather around the centenary barrier. That's a demonstration of the locomotive turntable in the Great Hall
Yeah, okay. So what we've got on this layout are 4 signals. 2 of the terminals down here, A, B and C. This afternoon, I'm delighted to say, we've also got a trainee at each of the signal boxes, which is exactly what we would have done during this layout's working line. These trainees today have come to us from Didcot, from the Great Western Railway Centre at Didcot, where they are going to put together, they've got the building brick already, the building built, they're going to put together the panel signal box from Swindon.